is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. And to our witnesses, thank you for bearing with us today as we have been in and out. Mr. Chipman, I'm going to come to you. There's been a lot said about your affiliations and the organizations and how that might influence your work at the ATF. And one of the things that I hear from Tennesseans is they want the ATF to be going after criminals, not after law-abiding gun owners. So how would you execute that?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you also for spending the time on the phone with me earlier
Sure.
so we could meet. I think the perfect example of how Tennesseans should expect ATF to respond is how we responded to your city that was bombed on Christmas. We will always be there in the worst hours to determine who committed a crime and bring them to justice if we can. We will always be focused on criminals. That's what we do.
And I hope you appreciate why people are very concerned about your stance on the Second Amendment and are very concerned that you would be going after law-abiding gun owners. So let me ask you this. In the House Judiciary Committee hearing on 2019, you said, and I'm quoting you, simply reinstating the 90s-era ban on assault weapons is not enough. So I want you to tell me what is enough in relation to this statement.
Thank you for the question. In that hearing, I was commenting on the fact that I had the opportunity to enforce the National Firearms Act for 24 years. That was an act that balanced the right of individuals to possess those firearms, but had a regulatory structure that I found kept them out of the hands of criminals, which is the ultimate goal of all Americans. I thought, and I expressed that belief at that time, that the National Firearms Act would be a proper way to balance the rights and
So
responsibilities
the
of
National
Americans.
Firearms Act would be enough.
I believe that the National Firearms Act would be enough.
Let me ask you this, because in the same hearing you continued, and this gets to the question that Senator Kennedy had for you, and I'm quoting you. Instead, we should regulate a broader class of firearms, including assault weapons manufactured before the law's enactment. One option would be to require the registration of all existing assault weapons under the National Firearms Act while banning the future manufacture and sale of these firearms. So in these statements, you're talking about expanding the National Firearms Act, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that would not be enforcing it as it is written. That would be a change of policy. And then you would ban the future manufacture. That would be a change of policy. Banning the sale would be a change of policy. And in these statements, and going back to that hearing, you were referring to common semi-automatic firearms when you speak of assault weapons, correct?
Senator, in this hearing, I was acting as an advocate and was asked to propose solutions to complex problems.
And you were referring to semi-automatic weapons, correct?
Yes, Senator, but
Yes,
as
thank you
Director of
very much.
AT...
Okay, Ms. Jadot, I'd like to ask you a question, please, ma'am. We are quite concerned about some of the practices that have taken place under USCIS. During your time as the Chief Counsel at USCIS, the agency expanded the use of discretionary parole activity from a restricted case-by-case basis into a variety of new parole programs, such as International Entrepreneur Parole, the Filipino World War II Veterans Parole Program, and the Central American Minor Parole Program. Did this expanded use of discretionary parole through these new programs actually circumvent congressionally established immigration policy? And did USCIS exceed its authority under law created by Congress by admitting aliens who did not qualify for admission under normal and legal immigration categories?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for taking the time to
Absolutely.
meet with me
Yes,
on the phone.
I enjoyed
Thank you.
it.
Yes, I did too. Thank you. With regard to your question, we looked at the Immigration and Nationality Act, and I have worked with at the time, other attorneys in the agency as well, to determine if it fits within the structure of the Immigration and Nationality Act. And we did determine that, and therefore we proceeded.
So you feel that none of these programs went outside of the authority?
That was the determination we made at the time.
So why not just go by the law as written?
So the way the law is structured is there's a case-by-case determination.
Correct.
And those programs certainly set out guidelines for adjudicators, but nonetheless, every individual must apply, must submit an application, must be reviewed, have background checks. An adjudicator must review that application very carefully before they make a decision.
Well, I will tell you, this appears when you expand the use of discretionary parole authority and move away from a restricted case-by-case basis and put these new programs in place. The appearance of that is that you're making it easier to circumvent the law as written. And that is problematic. I know I'm over my time. I have a question for you on the Ban Birth Tourism Act, a piece of legislation that I introduced. I'm going to submit that to you for the record. I know that Senator Cruz asked you about that earlier and would appreciate your attention to that question.
Absolutely.
And I will say this, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Jadot, you have an adorable family, and your girls deserve all the ice cream that they want to eat this
We already
afternoon
secretly promised them $2.
because they have behaved beautifully.
Oh, thank you.
We give them the gold medal for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. Senator Coons is recognized.